we have produced this film to promote Unicef's Our Right campaign. This focuses on rights of unaccompanied refugee children, and in particular their right to protection and their right to family reunification.
It's poor countries, not rich Western countries, who look after the vast majority of the world's refugees. The UN's Refugee Agency estimates that 86% of the world's refugees are sheltered by developing countries. Most refugees just move from one country to another. This summer, over a 5-week period, over 80,000 South Sudanese refugees fled to Uganda.
Over 65 million people around the globe have been forced to leave their homes. That's like the entire British population having to leave. Over 270,000 people have arrived in Europe, half of them women and children.
The countries on Europe's borders, Greece and Italy, are struggling to cope with the number of desperate people arriving. In September last year, European countries agreed to relocate 160,000 refugees away from Greece and Italy to help with the pressure. 11 months on, fewer than 4,000 refugees have been relocated. Britain refuses to help.
So far, in 2016, 198,420 people have sought safety in Europe. Around 156,000 more than had asked for protection during the same time period last year. Yet, in the first half of this year, Britain received just 19,978 asylum applications, including dependents.
Britain is not Europe's top recipient of asylum applications. Germany, France, Hungary, Italy, Greece and Austria are all receiving significantly more applications than we do.
There's no asylum visa. In fact, there are very few legal ways for refugees to safely escape their country and claim asylum in another country. The truth is, when war breaks out, countries like Britain often close down refugees' legal escape routes. Before the Syrian conflict broke out, only around a quarter of applications for travel visas from Syrians were refused. In the last 12 months, this has increased to over 37%. Refugees don't place their lives in smugglers' hands because they want to. They do it because they often have no other choice.
This lack of safe and legal routes for refugees to reach safety and claim asylum has deadly results. In 2015, 3,771 women and children lost their lives during the desperate attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea. Every death was a tragedy. So far, in 2016, 3,166 more people have died. Asylum seekers make up a tiny proportion of new arrivals in Britain. Today's statistics show that 633,000 people arrived in Britain in the year to March 2016. Asylum seekers coming to Britain, escaping persecution, made up just 7% of that figure. Of course, not all asylum seekers will be granted permission to stay in Britain. Early this summer, the UN accused the Eritrean regime of committing crimes against humanity, of mass enslavement and gross human rights violations. It also clearly stated that Eritreans fleeing the country should be granted international protection. Yet, the UK government is still failing to recognize Eritreans as refugees. This means that many Eritrean refugees are being forced to rely on the courts to provide them with the protection they need. In the last 12 months, a startling 87% of refusals on Eritrean claims which are appealed are overturned by the courts. This figure has risen since 2012, but is still below the figure for end of 2003, when there were 80,000 asylum seekers being supported. This does not mean asylum seekers live in luxury, far from it. People have no say in where they live and are often left to survive on around £5 a day.
Hi, my name is Sahil. I'm from Afghanistan. I've been here for 2 years. I come to Pasha School.
Can you tell us how life was like in Afghanistan?
In Afghanistan, the life was very hard. I go to school for 2 months. The Taliban killed the people.
About your journey as a refugee.
I left my family behind. I traveled by train come to the UK for 2 months.
What's difficult about being a refugee in the UK?
The language is hard, and I left my family in Afghanistan, and I learning new things.
This is a story of another refugee at Cockshot Hill. We're reading this on his behalf.
A group of men holding massive guns came to Dad's shop asking for the tax. My dad failed to pay the amount they were asking, so they started beating him up. He fell to the ground, bleeding, and they pushed him to the wall and said, "We will come back tomorrow." The next day they came back. My dad still didn't have enough money. They didn't say anything, but at evening, when we came back home, my mum was crying because the group of terrorists took away my sister and told us we needed to pay them back before they'll release her.
We gave them the amount. They said they would release her in an hour. And after an hour, the door knocked, and my sister's dead body was there. They left a note. "Next, it'll be your son." They were talking about me. We all were crying. We didn't know what to do, so my dad spoke to this person who said he will take them to a safe place.
It took him 20 days and 1 night. He came and took us in the car. The journey was possibly 4 hours long. We had to keep our heads down for the whole time. Then we boarded a flight, which I don't know where to because I couldn't speak English at that time. And then it was, I think, 6 hours of journey. We reached there and he kept us for 30 days.
It was all dark. He would come once a day, give food, and go. Then one night, he took us again on a car journey, but this time at the back. We couldn't breathe properly, and it was really dark.
Then, in some kind of dark place, he said, "Come out," and took us on the bus to this massive building. He left us at that point and said, "May God be with you." And that place was the home office.